Hello, my name is David Braun, and I want, on behalf of the Alamo Labs, to introduce our new market analysis form that we have produced that runs in Excel that you can copy and paste and put into an appraisal report. This podcast is the first of the series. We want to cover in this podcast why the appraiser needs to do a market analysis. Then we want to also cover what a market is. We'll also cover what is a bubble in a market, what are the characteristics of a bubble, how can it happen, and what are some of the ramifications of a bubble in a real estate market. Then we're also going to consider some methods of performing a market analysis. In this first podcast, I want to emphasize that appraisers have to move away from being processors to being problem solvers. Now, a lot of that is discussed in my book, Appraising in the New Millennium, Due Diligence and Scope of Work. I'm going to make some references from this book in this short podcast. So, why in the world is there so much focus and so much information out about market analysis? Everywhere you look, people are talking about attend the seminar or get the sheet, and even the Alamo Labs. Well, what recently came out from Fannie Mae was announcement 07-22, December 5th of 2007. So it's been out several months now. And what this has to do with is it's a memo to lenders about financing in declining markets. And what it specifically says is that if the market is declining where the loan is being on a house where the loan is being made, then there are actually different underwriting standards. So now we have a reason for the appraiser, if he's appraising for secondary market appraisal, we have what I describe in my book, what I describe as a primary appraiser generated information. What that means is it is information that the appraiser is going to provide an opinion or conclusion that's going to be isolated by the intended user and relied on. In this case, the intended user is going to look at this and say, is it in a declining market or isn't it in a declining market? And they're going to use that to make underwriting decisions. The second reason that we do this is what we've done all along, is to make the market conditions adjustment in our sales grid. Now, that information is made to help us find our final value estimate. In that case, this is not a PAGI, but that's the main. That's why we find it there. Now, we want to talk about the three outcomes to any conclusion that an appraiser makes. Again, that's in the scope of workbook, and these three conclusions are: number one, the first situation can be that the conclusion is meaningless. It neither helps nor hurts the intended user. The second possible outcome is that it's misleading, that an appraiser said the market was not declining when in fact it was declining. So in this case, the appraiser gives incorrect information that the intended user relies on and makes the wrong decision. The third outcome is a credible outcome in which the appraiser's information causes the intended user to make the right decision. So if you as an appraiser do a market analysis and come up with a conclusion that the market is declining or it's not declining, or a specific amount of an adjustment for time, positive or negative, then that information should be correct. Now, are you automatically qualified because you have an appraisal license that you can just automatically, through osmosis, make this kind of an analysis? And the answer, of course, is no. Now, let's talk about a book like this, The Appraisal of Real Estate, that the Appraisal Institute puts out. We're on the 12th edition. I heard the 13th edition is coming out pretty soon. Well, there's a whole chapter in here, and I believe it's chapter 11. And there is a whole chapter in here just on market analysis. This would be a good place to start. Another place would be to go to a good seminar. In either case, it's up to you to become competent to do this. Now, we want to just stop for a minute and talk about markets. And that's what's coming up next. So what we want to lead into that is tell you that markets are demand driven. Demand is based on a buyer's willingness a desire and willingness and ability to purchase a house. That's the reason that there are indirect methods such as trending population growth, looking at jobs and income in an area, and that tells you a lot about the demand. There's also more direct ways, and this is the type of a chart and graph that we want to help you produce in our market analysis Excel sheet that we've got for you to download. In this case, you can see in this market, we found the sales price per square foot of these sales. All of these dots represent a sale. This is time, and the red line kind of charts out this, and you can see that over time, the market was declining. Somewhere right in here, the market began to go up, and I would say this was a declining market, but now it's not. Now, if these last group of sales all just happen to be better houses, newer, or maybe fixed up or had more garages, they were just better houses, then this chart could give a false indication of the actual trend. Maybe the trend is still going down, these were just better houses. Now, we got to talk a little bit about statistics to get into that. When you have 40, 50, or 60 sales, in this case we had over 70 sales, that probably statistically works out. I use the word probable, so we want to be careful. So the point of this podcast is to tell you, you've got a little work to do. You can't just go to our form, open it up, and go through a process. You must become competent to do a market analysis through studying books like the Scope of Work book, where you think about your due diligence, and you think about conclusions, and you need to go through your basic principles. So I want to thank you for podcast 1, and please go ahead and view podcast 2 as well.